Hello and welcome to this Affinity photo tutorial where we'll be having a look at two tools, which is the pen tool and the node tool. Now these two tools are closely linked, which is why we're doing them together. The icon for the pen tool is found in this toolbar down the side here on the left, and next to that you get a little black triangle. If you click on that, you'll get the node tool option. If the node tool is the last one you used, you might have the white arrow on top, and then you would have to sort of click on the pen tool. Now the pen tool is probably better used in Affinity Designer, but it can be used to make selections of certain subjects, and if you want to sort of cut something out of an image, you can use the pen tool as well as other selection tools, but I just want to sort of concentrate on this tool at the moment. So when you click on the icon for the pen tool, along the top here you get a whole plethora of icons, and I freely admit I do not know what all of them do. The pen tool is to a certain extent a bit of a mystery to me. I know the basics, but as this is a beginner's tutorial, really the basics is all that you're sort of going to need for now. If you want to go more advanced and find out what some of these other icons can do, I'd suggest you look at a more advanced video, and if I do find any, I will add links to them in the description to this video. Now I've quickly made up this sort of weird design, mainly to give myself sort of circles and arches and straight lines to sort of work with, and it is this sort of shaped image here that I want to cut out and lose the pink and yellow background. So when you have the sort of pen tool selected, up here we got mode, and you get four modes. You get pen mode, which is the default, smart mode, polygon mode, and line mode. Now the easiest of these to understand is line mode, because basically it just draws a line. So you click where you want to start, and if you want to finish up there, it will draw a line. And if you increase the width of that line, you can see it, but for the purpose of this video, where we're trying to make a selection, I don't need to have a sort of line, a visible line. You just have this blue line here which is drawn by the program, but this will not actually be seen once you've made your selection. It's just helping to guide you. Now other options we got here is the polygon mode, which is a bit like the polygon tool which you get with the lasso tool, whereby you sort of click once and then just keep following round the object that you want to do. So let me just press Ctrl and Z a few times to get rid of that. Get rid of that. Now the smart mode, again, is a bit like the lasso tool, but you have like the magnetic option, so you can click and just drag round your object, and it will sort of try and make a selection that way. But it's a bit hit and miss and not very good, I don't think, so it's not something I would personally use. If I ever use the pen tool, I really only ever use pen mode, which is the default. So again, it's a bit similar to the polygon mode, we just click and go round. Now the only other sort of options I do know about is this one here, rubber band mode, because at the moment if I click here and then say I click there, I mean at the moment you've got no idea where the blue line is going to be until you click and you get the blue line letting you know where you've gone. But if you put it in rubber band mode, that blue line is sort of constantly there and visible, so you have a sort of an idea of where you are going. So I'll press Ctrl and Z a couple of times there to get rid of that. So probably the rubber band mode in conjunction with pen mode might be the best way to go, especially once you're starting out. And the only other sort of option I understand is this one here which you've got use fill, because if I draw a box, for example, and come back to the beginning, you've drawn that box, you've got no fill. So if I come back to there and then I click on use fill, you can see the fill colour has now gone to white. Before it was on none. So once I start to draw this box, it's already started to fill in the area. So if you wanted to draw a box, for example, and have it white, you can set the fill colour and do it that way. So, but I don't want to fill on this, I'm just going to be making a selection. So I'm going to go with pen mode and rubber band mode, and fill is off. So I'm going to start making this selection. I'm going to start on the straight edge, but before I do that, I just want to point out and remind you that running along the bottom here we do have some tips about what keyboards you can use, or keyboard shortcuts you can use I should say. So like if you want to get to the node tool quickly, you can press Ctrl and Alt to ignore snapping and other items here. So don't forget that you do have these tips down here. So I'm going to start up in this intersection up here and just click, and at this point you really do not necessarily need to be too fussy, as we're just doing a basic shape, and this may end up being a sort of rather boring video to watch, so you can always fast forward this. But basically you're just going round the outside of the item you want to select, and don't worry too much about like these circular areas. Almost there for this part, and back to your start position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and I can use the mouse to do this. So we've now come to the part where we change over to the node tool, and this is where you can edit these squares which are the nodes. Again, you have a lot of different options along the top, or I should say that a lot of them are the same options, and I don't fully understand any of these, but I will, for what I'm doing, you don't really need to. So I'm just going to fine tune. You can now click on a node and move it around and just fine tune its positioning. So I'll put that there. So hopefully you can see, though, if I bring this one down just so it's definitely on the green, so you can see there's a little bit of green outside the area. So I'm going to just nudge this line up. So what you've got to do is bring the node tool cursor, which is that white arrow, close to the line, and then as you get close to it, or on it, you will see that it sort of changes. It has a little black squiggle below it. So now if you click and hold down the left mouse button, you can just nudge that line ever so slightly and sort of get it to fit better. So I'm sort of fairly happy with that straight line. So I'm going to come down to this curve here. So again, I'm going to move the node cursor to the line, click and drag this out, and then it's just a case of finding a spot that is as best as you can get to the curve, and then you can also move the next node out a bit. So that blue line has gone slightly over, so when you click on these you get the nodes have these sort of handles, and you can click and just maneuver the line with these handles. So I'm fairly happy with that. So come to this next one, drag this out and get it as close as I can. Fairly happy with that. Come to the next one, and yeah, fairly happy with that one. Now I'll bring this node down there and then nudge out that line. Now this node might need to just nudge out slightly to give you that much smoother circle. So I'm happy with that. I'm fairly happy with this one here. Bring this one nearer to the corner and then just nudge in this area there, and now we just come to this one. So again, just bring it in, keeping that left mouse button until you're in position, then let go of the left mouse button. Maybe bring that node down there, and then I can use this handle just to nudge that up and make a better selection that way. And you can use the navigation tool box here to just maneuver this around. Bring that down and over, and bring that node better to the edge of the circle, and then just click and drag this until I'm happy. And then maybe just tinker with that handle there. Now sometimes you may you go to click on a node and you sort of accidentally miss it, and you'll click there and it will disappear. But if you just click back on the sort of roughly in the area that you want, those nodes will return. So let me just bring that one as best I can to about there, as I'm happy with that. And that one there, and you've got sort of getting the idea of how this is working. So I can speed up slightly here, especially as we're getting near to the end, and about there, there. That one's quite easy, and I think this is the last one. Just bring that out a tad. Alright, I think that is pretty much it. Let me zoom in on this one, it looks a bit suspect. Yeah, bring that to there. It is a case of sort of just tinkering until you get a selection that you are happy with. That might mean zooming in quite a bit to get close. Yeah, so you can see some of these ones I did from far out zoomed out, I should say. It's not quite on the spot they should be. So let me do Control and 0 to zoom out. So as you can see, I mean, it's only a rough selection, and with a bit more time and effort you can sort of make a better job of it than I have done. You can also sort of add nodes as you go along. So say for example on this one, if you wanted another node, you just click once and it will add extra nodes at certain points, and then you can then alter them. But once you've made your selection, if you come back to the pen tool, you have the options up here to either add a mask, which will be a sort of layer mask that will be added in this shape, or a selection, and then this will put the sort of marching ant selection around the area that you've drawn out. I'm going to go for layer mask, so I'll click on that, and what that has done, if I drop down this, it has added a layer mask sort of using that selection, and so that is now blocked off the background. So if I come off this tool, you can see, I mean, there are some areas up here, if I zoom in, where I didn't make quite the greatest selection possible, but you can sort of paint on the layer mask and sort of tidy up these areas. But let me just zoom out again. But if I wanted to sort of change the background from it was, I could bring in a new background just by copying it and then pasting it and then dragging it below that area, and so you've got a new background for whatever it is that you've selected. Now, just to show you, this is sort of fairly easy on the shapes like this, but I have done this on this picture from pixabay.com, where you got this hot air balloon on this sort of very plain blue background, and I used the pen tool to draw around here, and you got all the little loops of the balloon up here, and then you got straight edges around the basket there. The only thing that was a problem was like these lines here. I think I kept a couple of them in, but on the whole I then later used the selection brush to sort of select the blue areas inside this area here to add them to the area that I wanted to mask off, and that is this one here. If I turn off the background, and this was my selection. As you can see, I've got one line here, a couple of these others are missing, but on the whole, I didn't do too bad a job using the pen tool and taking a bit more time selecting that balloon, and then I just added a sort of a more interesting sky to that picture rather than just that sort of boring plain blue. That makes the picture a bit more interesting, and the fact that some of these lines aren't visible or there is not as noticeable. I did have to add some minor adjustments to help blend this in a bit better, but on the whole, just using the pen tool and the node tool to make this selection, you ended up with a better picture. So my advice is, if you're going to make a selection of something, you're probably best working with the selection brush tool and possibly the freehand selection tool, and you also do have the flood selection tool, which I'm not a big fan of, but these are probably your first three go-to selection tools. But don't forget, you do also have the pen tool, and it's probably better if the subject you're selecting is has got sort of straight lines and maybe just a few curves and what have you, rather than sort of say like a model with long flowing hair. It's very hard to get all those hair selected. So if it's a fairly basic subject like a balloon or a house or something like that, the pen tool and node tool might be a good way to go. But I would also advise, if you want to look into the pen tool, to check out a more advanced tutorial on the subject. So basically that is the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.